would like to welcome my brother Chris Fowler back to the Quiet Time podcast. We are back in this thing. You will see more of him, especially with everything that's going on right now. My dude, what's good?
What up? Can't ban the snowman.
We are here to talk about The Last Dance now that it is finally over. Not finally over because we don't want it to be over, but it is now over. So let's recap. What did you think of it?
I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, it did exactly what it was supposed to do, which was to make Mike look like this mythical figure and the Bulls look like this unbeatable dynasty, which they kind of were. But it gave you a little insights into the conflicts that they had and how they resolved them. And, you know, you could definitely see some of how his teammates thought about him. And they were trying to be as politically correct as they possibly can while still telling the truth. And I think that was good. I mean, probably should have heard more from Phil's perspective. Phil only gave a few anecdotes here and there, but you could tell like he was a stabilizing force behind the whole thing. Probably doesn't get enough credit for what he did. But, I mean, I think the documentary did exactly what it was supposed to do. And it filled a void that I think sports fans needed. I got bored with it halfway through, though.
Yeah, I wanted to see more of him working out and behind the scenes of what made him for Jordan. We already know you cold, bro. We knew you wear your shoes.
We knew you could hoop. You know, we knew about the golf and the gambling. Like, show me something like we didn't know to the extent, but like show me something we didn't know.
Right. But I think we know that because we're always looking at Mike and always constantly looking at, we're trying to find the behind the scenes footage like we had with Kobe with the Muse and that's what we were kind of looking for. But I don't think Mike wants people to know, or maybe they weren't even taping workouts like that back then.
And it wasn't just about him. It was also about the Bulls, where Kobe's Muse was about Kobe. Like, it was just about Kobe. Like
this was a lot about Mike, though.
Yeah, no, it was Mike and the supporting cast, but they had to mention some other people to it, which you couldn't show all Mike.
You know, going back to what you said about Phil, he definitely held it down. The fact that Dennis Rodman went somewhere during the finals, the fact that he went somewhere during the finals and Phil didn't make a big deal out of it, and the fact that Dennis came back and still played how he normally would. I mean, that's incredible. You can't do that nowadays. You can't do it.
Not without it blowing up on social media. Like somebody would have him on Instagram before he touched down. Like a lot of the things Dennis Rodman do or did back then, you couldn't even get away with now. Like stepping off of a plane just because it's a camera on you every time you step foot anywhere. So, but a lot of dudes mentally couldn't do that either. Like it takes a special dude mentally to be able to go get on a jet after a game, go wrestle, like perform in another theater, basically perform, get back on the plane, and then go, dominating the playoff game. He's special. Like he a different type of mental beast is Dennis Rodman, but Phil understanding that, and then allowing him to be himself. Like not many coaches would allow that, or organizations would allow that, but he was more of, I understand my player as a person more than just treating him like a basketball player. And if he needs this to perform, and this is just what I'm going to have to live with.
Yeah, I mean, Phil was definitely the glue that held everything together. Is Phil the greatest coach of all time?
I don't know, because, I mean, I've never seen him coach without, a superstar. There's coaches like, I mean, you can say, I've never seen him do it without somebody who was perennially probably one of the, you could say, top 2 players in the league at the time. And in terms of like maybe ego management, which is a lot of what the NBA is, managing superstar egos, then he's probably the best at it. But
I mean, you can't. I mean, before he was Phil Jackson, Mike was obviously one of the top players in the league, but he helped Mike win. So he wasn't.
Definitely. Mike. He managed that ego and got Mike out of his own ways. Like we actually have no idea what he was doing. But we know he won. He found a way. So when you win, how many titles he got? 9? No,
11.
He got 11. So he got 6.
6 with the Bulls, 5 with the Lakers.
Yeah. So he got 11. he gets people out of their own way and gets them to do stuff for the benefit of the team.
Which I think is important
I mean,
right there. I mean, that's what a lot of people struggle with when it comes to being a top person in sports, business, whatever, is getting out of your own way.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's important that coaches are able to do that, get people's ego out of the way. Because I mean, once you start making money and doing it at an extremely high level, your ego can stop you from doing a lot of things. So if you can put in a system or a plan together to help people's egos and help shift that ego to go in the direction of a team concept, because he didn't change the ego. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he didn't change Dennis Rodman. He found a way to help Dennis Rodman drive his personality within the team concept. The same with Mike, the same with Scotty. And I think that's what made him successful.
Mike, in that last playoff series, when Scotty got hurt, I'm going to win. I'm going to find a way. He was always finding a way. That's what people don't really – I don't know if people were really watching that about The Last Dance, is that Mike was going to find a way, like passing the ball or just, all right, Scotty's down. Hey, Scotty, I need you out here. You don't got to do much, but I need you out here, though.
Right. He was different. You talking. He scored half his team points in that game. I think he had 45. The team only had 90-something.
Yeah, and they had the rest of the team at 42.
Yeah. So, like, when you think about it in that space where he was playing, he played damn near the whole game, still scored 45, was able to get the bucket to bring the team closer, a steal, and a bucket to take the lead. It was something different mentally about him, but he had so much game. Like, he had so much skill and so much ability that it wasn't a whole lot. It wasn't a whole lot he couldn't do. He didn't have many flaws as a basketball player. Like, you can't find many flaws within his game.
What would you say was one of his biggest flaws, since you really watched a game like that? I mean, you called me and you said, you know, the fact that Mike averaged whatever he averaged in his first finals and he only made 4 threes, that means he was getting baskets.
Yeah, he was. I think he averaged like 35 in his first final series, and he made 4 threes the whole final series. And I think he only took like 7. The fact that you can play and understand your spots like that, to the point where you're so self-aware about where you want to get to, how you're going to get to these spots. And then when you get to those spots that everybody knows you're going to, you're still going to make the shot. Like, it takes a supreme amount of skill to do what he did for the amount of time that he did it. And I don't think people, I think our generation, we were growing up in the 90s. And I don't think we were old enough to really understand and watch the game. So what we think about Mike is that he's a mythical figure, because that's how he's portrayed in the media. During this quarantine, having a chance to watch him, he was a mythical figure, and like he was that good. Going through the different tapes of him in final series, he really was that good, to the point where what people say about him was the truth. And when he didn't have to, and I think, you asked me the question about his flaws. So if I were to say one of his flaws, I would have to say 3-point shooting. But I don't know if I would necessarily call that a flaw, other than the fact that he just didn't do it. Like,
he didn't have to.
He didn't have to do it, and that wasn't the game. Like, people would step in for open threes and take long twos in that era of the game. If you saw watching John Paxson play from 91 to 93, he'd be wide open at the 3-point line and take one step in and shoot a long two, like a shot in this game that you'd be crucified for. In today's game, and that just was the game. So he mastered the game as it was in that era. And I think if you were to put him in another era, if just by purely watching his shooting motion and his shooting form, he could have become a good 3-point shooter. He just didn't have to shoot them because he understood his spots and was self-aware enough in that to be so good to get his points in that way. So I don't think he had many flaws. I don't think he had any flaws as a basketball player.
What do you think about him saying that they could have won a 7th? I think it would have been, I don't know if they would have got it done. It depends on how much of the team would have came back. But if you got him and Scotty on the team, you got a pretty good chance.
You got a chance, and you got to think that they could have found some more pieces to put around those guys, maybe either make them younger or take the pressure off of them in that sense. But I think the team that won the championship that year was the Spurs, and they had Duncan and Robinson. So if the Spurs meet the Bulls in that finals, I don't know who on the Bulls can stop those two. Now, I don't know who on the Spurs can stop Jordan, but that tandem, the Bulls, I don't think had an answer for. I mean, at the center position was the one position where I think you could take advantage of them. And I mean, like even if Rodman comes back and he's dominant,
he's getting fits.
Yeah, but David Robinson is still like he a dream team member. Like he was that good. So it's still somebody else you had to account for at that level. So I just don't know how you do it. I mean, could they have done it? I believe so. Like, I'm not gonna bet against them. But the team that won it that year had strengths where the Bulls were deficient.
Yeah. Thinking about, this Last Dance and the 73-9 Warriors, not even the KD Warriors, Warriors with KD, and they played Mike and them. Who's winning?
Mike.
Who's guarding KD?
Nobody. Nobody's guarding KD, and nobody's guarding Mike. And I think this is what makes the Warriors so good is they have an ability for at least three guys that are on the floor have to be accounted for without touching the ball. Like, you can't leave Steph, you can't leave Clay, and you can't leave KD. Even when they don't have the ball in their hands, they still have to be accounted for. So what people started doing against them to combat the way that they ran the pick and roll with Steph and Draymond or KD and Draymond or whoever is they had to start switching. And this is where Houston was the most effective when they played them in the playoff series. When you switch on them, you prevent long closeouts. And then when you prevent long closeouts, you take away the ability for the inability for defense to chase the ball. So that's what they did. They put you in a pick and roll. They threw it to Draymond on a short roll, and now the defense is chasing the ball, having to make a decision. In order to combat that, you switch all the pick and rolls, and the reason you do that is now I'm no longer playing at a handicap or a disadvantage. And since I'm no longer playing at the handicap or disadvantage, there is no driving lanes, and now I don't have to worry about long closeouts, right? The Bulls in that time had the ability to do that with their lineups. Steve Kerr's not a small guy, right? Ron Harper is 6'6". Jordan was 6'6". Pippen was 6'8", and then Rodman was 6'7". So on that floor, they had the ability to switch five with longer defenders who could force guys like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson to put the ball on the floor and force them to finish or make tough shots around the rim. Right? You weren't going to make any shot tough for KD, but they had the ability to switch all five of them screens with like-sized guys. You get a like-sized guy on a like-sized guy. Now I'm worried about lateral ability defensively and length and athletic ability, in which I believe the Bulls were more athletic and longer as a unit than the KD Warriors. On the other hand, if I switch, if now you're running a KD or a Steph Draymond ball screen, and I got Kerr on Steph or Ron Harper on Steph, and now you run up and the switch is Rodman, I'm living with that switch. Not to say it's going to work, but I'm living with it. And I'm forcing Rodman. I'm saying, Rodman, let's force him to the rim and let's contest the shot at the rim and let's see what we do. Then you want a ball screen with somebody else, and then it's Harper switching on him, and then it's Pippen switching on him. So you basically have the ability to switch five positions. And I think that would benefit the Bulls, while the inability it would make, or the inability for the Warriors to do the same thing, even though they would try to switch five. But there is no making a shot hard for Mike at the rim, not with the lack of shot blocking that the Warriors had. And I mean, you could probably say that the Bulls lacked shooters in which you would be able to help a little bit more. But then you telling me that somebody's going to stop the man from getting to his mid-range spot and making a shot. what have you.
His whole career with that. So
yeah, and I'm just not gonna believe it. Like if he could finish in the era that he was playing in and find a way to be as effective as he was in the 2-point range, I think he could do it in this era too. So and I'm going
in this era. What do you think he would do in this era? He had 10 scoring titles.
I mean, I think it would be a little bit. I think it would be a lot easier for him because it's just more space. You know, now you have 4 and 5 men who can shoot the ball. Where in that era, you had 4 and 5 men who took up space by the rim because they were post up bigs and they were physical bigs, pick and roll bigs. Where now, if you put him at the elbow and now you saying I got a shooter in the corner, and that shooter in the corner might be my 5 man or my 4 man. And now how small ball is taking over. There's just so much space in which somebody who can score in a limited amount of dribbles becomes that much more effective. So, I mean, I don't see how anybody stops him. I think he shoots over 50% and averages 30 a game. And the only reason I think he averages 30 is because he's going to win. So he's going to make sure other people get involved. But if he wanted to average 40 and 45 points a game, that's exactly what he'd do.
In this era?
And that's exactly what he do. It's too much space. It's way too much space. It's way more space than it was in his era. Like there was always somebody by the basket in his era where that's just how the game was played. You didn't see a lot of 100-point games in those finals back then. Where nowadays, like when you watch the Warriors and the Cavs in the finals, like you was getting in the 110s and 120s. It's just when you got talented players in that much space, it's impossible to stop.
So. We might as well just finish off with who's the greatest of all time.
Mike. Right. And there's just so many arguments that people make in some other people's favors, and I can see everything. I can see all arguments.
So give me LeBron. Give me why somebody would say LeBron is the greatest of all time. Why would they say he's the greatest of all time?
Well, statistically, it's going to be hard to argue when you talk about how many points and how many assists and how many rebounds he's going to end up with. I think he might end up in the top 10 all time in all of those categories. Yeah, so statistically, when you think about it, it's going to be hard to argue. Somebody who's he went to, I think, 9 straight finals. I mean, there was a dominance over a conference over a period of time that really hasn't been seen since Mike. And when you think about that, like when you think about what he's going to do statistically and then how many times he's actually been in the championship series, I can see why somebody would call him the greatest of all time. I wouldn't, but I could see why somebody would. I would not.
You also made a point for Kobe.
Yeah, well, I mean, Kobe might be the best master of the game. And I say that because unlike LeBron and unlike Jordan, Kobe's athleticism didn't propel him he wasn't the most athletic in the league. And I think during Jordan's time, and I didn't give him the credit for this that I should have because I didn't watch him until now, but he was the most athletic player on the floor for the most part of his career. Like he had abilities, genetic abilities, God-given abilities that you just couldn't teach. And LeBron is the same way. Like his ability, his genetic features, there's something about him that you just can't teach. It was just given. Kobe, you can replicate Kobe's body type and his athleticism every draft class. Like there's somebody like him in every draft class. But the way he mastered the little nuances and little skills of the game, while still scoring all of those points and winning 5 titles, really, I can see why you can make the case for him. Because if you're want to talk about the best basketball player in terms of who had the most basketball skill out of the people who we put at the top of those lists, he would be it. Because if you taken genetics out of it and whatever you can't control out of it, his controllables, he did the best.
What about KD though?
With genetics,
but I mean, he has genetics, but he's skilled.
Yeah, no, he's nice. But he has all the capabilities of ending up being in that conversation when it's all said and done. Like now, injuries have gotten the best of him, and I think we would talk differently about him if his longevity was different and he was able to stay healthy in some of them years in OKC. And then if he was healthy now, if he was healthy this year, but a few more good years, he in that conversation too. 1 or 2 more good years, he in that conversation.
But Mike, that's your GOAT.
Yeah, and when you put it all together and you really start to understand what skilled performance is, and
Yeah,
somebody
touch on that a little bit. What skill performance is?
so like and from what I've learned, there's 3 characteristics of skilled performance. There's maximum amount of goal attainment, minimum energy expenditure, and minimum movement time. So somebody who can achieve the goal efficiently while moving efficiently and expending the least amount of energy is the most skilled at the certain aspect. I don't think there was a lot of people who we can put at that top of that list who do things as skilled as Mike did. If we judge him by that activity as skilled performance, I mean, of those characteristics of what skilled performance is. So then when you come to dominating the game, winning 6 championships every time you get there, every year he kept a Hall of Famer from a championship. There were, when we talk about his competition back then not being as good as it was today, that's because he was so much better than it. and I think we misconstrue that, where the people who argue against him say he wasn't playing against anybody. Charles Barkley was an MVP. And in the year, Karl Malone is first or second on the all-time scoring list. John Stockton is one of the top 5 point guards of all time, the best assist point guard of all time. You look at Clyde Drexler, like we forget that Portland team was in the finals just 2 years earlier when they lost to the Pistons. Right. So like when Mike came into his second finals, well, that Portland team was getting to their second, the first finals. And we look at Worthy and Magic. Like, now, were the Bulls better? Yeah, we can say that now. Yeah, it's easy for us to say it now that they were better, that they were dominant. But back then, they lost game 1, and people were like, wow, they probably going to lose this series. And you heard people say it on the Last Dance documentary. How many times during a given series where somebody said, oh, we had them. I thought we were better than them. I thought they were going to win this series. I thought we were going to win this series. And they didn't win. So his competition looks weak now because he beat them all. Like if you beat everybody you run up against, of course we're going to tell you that they not that good. But them dudes was that good. I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine how differently we would think about individuals like Karl Malone if he had won 2 titles over Mike. How much differently? Like would we call him the best power forward of all time? Who knows?
I believe what he had and what he was doing.
Charles Barkley the same way. What would we say about him if he ended up winning that finals? Like look at the people who have won finals in the LeBron era that we talk about now in a different light. Like when Steph won his first one, we wasn't talking about Steph like that until he won. Then after he won, we started talking about him like that. Kawhi Leonard's the same way. KD we was talking about like that. He was that nice. But Dirk, like you can't tell me there's many differences between Dirk and Charles Barkley in terms of how people spoke about him until Dirk won the title. And now we elevate your level as soon as you win that game. And I think Mike doesn't get enough credit for that. Like Patrick Ewing wasn't weak. Penny and Shaq, they were not weak.
Right.
Reggie Miller was not weak.
Bad
weak. Yeah. But like, when they beat the Bad Boy Pistons, like after they lost to them 2 years in a row, they weren't weak. The Celtics, I said, when they was losing to the Celtics, like, yeah, they went through these tough teams, but let's not sit here and act like that they was weak. They was just playing weak teams all the way through. Like, these people was good. He was just that much better.
These people are Hall of Famers.
Yeah, he was that much better. When we look back on it, we want to justify it by saying, oh, they weren't as good. And were they as talented as the guys in the league today? Probably not. But you're also telling me that LeBron is supremely better than everybody else in the league today too. So if you're justifying it by saying, well, he was just that much better than everybody else back then, what you're telling me is the gap is closer for LeBron and everybody else now. Because if he's the greatest of all time, he's that much better than everybody else he's playing against right now. in which he should be able to do the same things to them.
Right.
And essentially, he's not doing that. And that's not a knock. That's just a fact.
Mm.
And when you can look at it from a lot of different perspectives about how we want to go about, breaking down the GOAT argument. And just don't like the reason I don't like it is because a lot of people try and do it by statistics. And I feel like that we haven't watched enough and haven't gone back and watched enough. So everybody in our generation that argues it, we're arguing it from a perspective of even whichever side you want to argue. You're arguing it from a perspective of never having watched Jordan closely and only watching LeBron emotionally. And this is the thing that we get caught up on is we watch the game in real time. When you watch it in real time, you watch it like a fan with emotion. If you don't like LeBron, you want him to fail. So everything he does wrong, you expose, you magnify. If you love LeBron, you want him to succeed. So every time he does or has a great game, you magnify it. No matter how he might have played in that game or how he might have played in that series, you're going to magnify how exceptional you thought he was. With Jordan, if you haven't watched it in a long time, you're just going to go off what you remember. Before we argue them, we have to watch them on an unemotional basis. It's almost like sport athletes when we watch film. You could go into a game thinking you had a great game and watch the film and be like, yeah, well, really wasn't that good
at all. Yeah.
Well, you could think, no, I played a pitch for a game and look back and watch on it and be like, oh, I didn't play that bad. And I think when we argue nowadays, I think we have to stop arguing from an emotional, or not argue, when we debate who we think is better, we got to stop debating from an emotional perspective about what we remember or what we saw during an emotional time. I think if we all turned on those series right now, we think something different. We see something and we think something differently about what we saw. And I think we'd see something different from Mike about how we understand skill performance. And I think we'd see something different from LeBron about how many other players on the floor competed at such a level that may not make him the greatest of all time, or how his style of play, in a sense, helps him exacerbate his stats. Statistically, he looks so good because the style that he plays or he has to play or his team plays. And that's why he looks so good. That's why his stats go so good all the time, because, the team is structured for him to get those stats, whereas not structured maybe to be prepared to win.
Yeah. But you watch the games with no emotion. You went back and watched all the final series from the last
because once you know who wins, you watching it from a different perspective.
Yeah. Okay.
Like you can watch it from an unbiased perspective because you already know the outcome. So and sometimes you know the play that's coming next because you remember watching it. But if you already know the outcome, you watch it on its tabs. And you start watching it and you can break down different things that you see and you didn't see. Where, you break down this 2000, what was that? 2012 against the Spurs, or 2013, the first one against the Spurs.
Yeah, what they won.
The first 5 games of the series, you could argue who the best player on that floor was in each game. Fourth quarter of Game 6 and all of Game 7, LeBron James was the best player on the court. You couldn't question it at all. And when I went back, you could say, I would have said, Ray Allen saved him in Game 6. Ray Allen saved him in Game 6 because as an emotional onlooker, all you're looking at is what happened during that last shot.
In the highlights.
When you go back and watch it, in the fourth quarter of that game, in Game 6, he was dominant. The Spurs was up double figures, and he was playing as if he lost the game, he would have died. Somebody would have killed him. He was playing that hard and that aggressive, with no abandon. And he was the best player on the floor. And then he was the best player on the floor for 48 minutes to Game 7. And then you go back to next year, I think Game 1 is when he caught the cramps. He was the best player on the floor in Game 1. Game 2, he was too. But Game 3, 4, and 5, he was not. Or if you want to say he was, I could argue why Kawhi Leonard was. When you talk about 2015 finals, first year back with the Cavs and the Warriors, they will sit here and tell you that they did not have enough to win that game or that series. They did not have enough. However, they were up 2-1. And I got the greatest basketball player in the world on my team, and I'm up 2-1. Simple fact of the matter is, he averaged 35 points a game in that series. Anybody will tell you, well, he averaged 35, this and that. It took him 33 shots to get those 35 points. He shot under 40%. If you break it down and say, if you just shoot 45%, all of them games were close going down the stretch in the fourth quarter. You just shoot 45%, you give your team a better chance to win. And each time, you give your team a better chance to win just by being more efficient. But if all you're arguing with me because you look at the stats and you want him to be great and you watching the game, if all you're telling me is he had 35, or you're missing other points of the simple shots that he may have missed, the amount of dribbles that it may have taken him to get 2 points on a given possession. And I think all of that, or the amount of dribbles that it took him to get an assist on a given possession, I think when you break it down and you look at all of that, I think essentially we can talk about. I mean, that's where you can bring up your argument, because I mean it's a lot of time. I watched him. I wanted to watch because I wanted to think. I wanted to stop remembering or arguing out of emotion and just. I've seen it. You can argue it. Like you can look at the tape and argue why it's not the way it is. The Mavs series was incredibly awful. It was not good. So I mean, I think we got to stop doing that. And I think like when people talk about it on TV and analysts write about it, I think they should watch it in real time. And before they write or go on TV to debate about it, they should watch it again to make sure you saw what you actually saw. Because if you don't watch it again, you may not have seen it. You just might want to remember it one way because it fits your point.
Yeah, you remember it the way you want it to remember.
Yeah.
We might as well just appreciate these guys for what they are anyway. So
yeah, that's hard to do.
The same, so.
Yeah, you still, like I said, you still got to have a debate. Like we still want to talk about it. And the first thing you got to do is understand what skill performance is. Like if you don't understand what it takes, like what a skill is, if it's not minimum energy, if it's not minimum movement, and then you don't get the maximum amount of a goal attainment, then it's not a skill. It's just something like somebody could get 2 points in 18 dribbles. Somebody could get it in 3. The person that's more skilled is the person that gets it in 3.
Right.
And putting the ball in the basket, because I don't have to do that much in order to do what I'm doing, But we don't look at it like that. We watch it emotionally as fans without understanding the context behind what skill performance actually is. Till we understand what it actually is, then we can't really argue about it. Till we watch it and then understand what it actually is.
Everybody, Chris Fowler, my brother.
You can't ban the snowman. You can't ban him.
Appreciate being on the Quiet Time podcast. You guys continue to subscribe, leave reviews. Much love. You'll be hearing from more of us, or you'll be hearing from us even more, my brother and I together. Much love, brother.
One.